Well, hello again. We are back, actually by popular demand. Welcome to the Debt Free Hour. My name is James Wortman. I am a debt and credit advisor with co-host Alex Viecco, resident debt expert, and you've been doing debt advising and counseling, and you've been in the financial community since what? God was a little boy, or what?
Yeah, we talk about that often.
Yeah.
A long time, since I was a little boy.
For those of you that missed us, we had a radio show. We had about 25, 30 radio shows teaching about debt and credit and all kinds of issues related to that. And by demand, we are back. And this time, we're back on TV, which is kind of like radio with pretty pictures, okay? And we're here on kdtv.com. You can not only see the show once, you can come back later, share it with friends and relatives anytime you like. These shows will be stored up to, about a year, I guess.
Correct.
At kdtv.com. So we are on Ventura County's only internet television station, just for you. So, by the way, this is the show. It says here, together we examine debt situations and possible debt solutions. Here is where you learn about all those little credit card secrets that the credit card companies do not want you to know about. Here's where you discover all the options for various kinds of debt. And of course, here is where you find out about the action steps that you can take to get yourself to the ultimate American goal, which is debt-free.
But before we get started into the show, James, I'd like to make sure that everybody understands how to be able to get in touch with us.
Absolutely.
So they can email us. Maybe you have questions that we won't be reading your name out loud or to the audience, but certainly the scenario. And you can rest assured that if you're dealing with a circumstance, there's probably a dozen other people out there that are afraid to ask the same question.
Or hundreds, literally, out there.
So be sure to email us, and you can reach us. You can go to www.debtfreehour.com, or if you click on the Debt Free Hour link on kadytv.com, you'll be able to fill out the information at info@debtfreehour.com. And you'll be able to get the email over to us, and we'll address your questions here on the air, so you can make sure you get tuned in to get your questions answered.
And give us a basic idea of what the situation is that you're facing, what kind of debt, amounts, things like that. Again, we won't use your name on the air, but we can certainly respond to it, give you some ideas, some options. And we do have a couple of emails. We haven't been on for a little bit, but we continually get phone calls and emails based on the shows that you'll find there at debtfreehour.com on the internet. So you can make sure you can share those with friends and family. They can be learning about debt and credit, whether they're in good shape or not. Doesn't matter. There's a lot of powerful information there, and a lot of varied topics too. Everything from mortgages to we'll be talking about RFID, which if you don't know what that is, you're going to find out here in a subsequent show.
Well, it's important that people get the tools and information to protect themselves, not only their identity, as we're going to be talking about, but also how to protect yourselves from all the tricks that the credit card companies are up to. And with some changes in the laws, of which we will cover, you need to be aware. The other thing I want to make sure that everybody has is a couple of phone numbers for those of you who are in immediate need of help. You can contact Debt and Credit Advisors directly at 888-940-3222. Or you can contact New Era Debt Solutions for anybody who's got any debt issues that they want to talk to a counselor about immediately at 1-800-990-5301.
Now, getting to the point where you would call or email or get curious in the first place, both Alex and I understand that can be a difficult first moment in your life. We want to touch on something for just a second. Let alone the fact that you've got a debt load out there that you're not quite sure what to do with, or you're feeling the burden of it. There's other psychological aspects that come into play, and I'm going to have Alex touch on that for just a second. I get it all day long, and I know Alex does too. And you want to jump on that?
What ends up happening is oftentimes most people are open to talk about divorces or different emotional situations that are going on with their life. But when it comes to debt, there's always a feeling of shame that people go through. And so what ends up happening is they tend to shy away from having to talk to somebody, or they just don't want to deal with the reality. So oftentimes they keep putting off the inevitable instead of talking to somebody and getting the answers. And then when they do decide to do something about it, they may actually just pick the first thing that comes to them without really doing enough research or getting enough of the tools to make the wise decision on what options you have, which again, this is our whole premise of this show, is to give you the tools to make the decisions that are going to impact you in a positive way, not only now but in the future.
Normally, people are trapped by circumstance with debt. You find yourself in a position that you were never really planning to find yourself in the first place. It's not a matter so much of feeling the guilt and shame. Understand you've got those feelings, but you need to move and take those first steps, because the reality is, if you don't move on your debts will move on you. So it's a good idea to take that first step, get out there. You'll find out you might be a little better off than you thought, 9 chances out of 10. You'll find out you have options of things that you can do, and that's very important, because even finding out you've got options, I'm telling you, it's going to relieve a little bit of that stress right away, knowing you've got somewhere to turn. And that's basically part of what this show is about, is to teach you about your options, either for yourself or someone you can share the options with that you know is having a tough time. Because right now in this economy, I don't know anybody who's not untouched by what's going on, whether it's high gas prices or what have you.
Everybody's been impacted by this, and I think, our show was obviously way ahead of its time, because we saw what was coming, and the fact that more and more you're hearing about different companies advertising online, and understand that a lot of companies are actually doing advertising to generate a lead so that they can sell it to 3, 4, 5, 6 different companies. We are here to make sure that you understand what choices you need to understand about, and which direction you need to take your family.
And there are ways, I just want to touch on something we've touched on in the past, but I want to remind you, there are ways you can sort of for lack of a better term, fight back things that are going on, like managing your credit. Obviously, you want to try to avoid late fees as best you can, because obviously that adds to your debt and starts compounding. There are new regulations kicking in, but they don't kick in for a while yet. So you need to be aware of these things. You've heard a lot of buzz on the media about credit card regulations, but be aware a lot of that stuff doesn't kick in until next year. So,
and the banks aren't being shy about taking advantage of you and I, or taking advantage of any opportunity they have to kick in everything they need to make to put themselves in a better situation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Every day I talk to somebody who discovered they've got floating due dates. They notice that from month to month the date that's due on the credit card. Well, they do that deliberately to try to catch you in late fees. So you need to pay attention to that stuff. That's one of those things the regulations will address later on. But right now, be aware. Read those billing notices, because right now the game is on. They're looking at every possible way to squeeze you for every possible dime while they can get away with it.
Let's briefly touch on, you mentioned something that I don't know if people really understand what a floating due date is. In the past, people had let me just clarify, people had a specific date when their bill was due.
Like the 10th or whatever. Yeah.
Call it the 10th of the month. What the creditors have figured out is that by making the due date change, so the next month, instead of being the 10th, it's going to roll back to the 8th, and then the 6th and the 4th. They know that people are going to tend to forget, and also the fact that most people get paid every 2 weeks. They know by doing this that they're all going to fall prey to having the late charges or kicking in, and then that's an extra $35 to $39. So make sure you're aware and you stay on top of when the due dates are, based on the statement, not based on when you paid it last month.
And you have a personal concept you use. You pay it as you get it, right?
Well, it's the best thing to do, and I learned this from my business partner that I started seeing him. I used to try to use the float because I come from the banking world. But I saw that he always had the habit that as soon as the bill came, immediately he wrote the check. Idealistically, that's how you should use credit cards, right? You write the check for the money that you use for a few days, and that's it. You had use of the money. I don't think a lot of people are doing that, so I started applying this process in my life, where as soon as I get the bill, I write it, and this way I don't have to worry about over-limit fees or late charges or things like that. And then you get it out of your hair. So you didn't use the money for the full 30 months, but you get the opportunity to go ahead and get that headache off of your shoulders, if you will.
Another quick tip to think about is when you have a credit card with a limit on it, try not to use more than 1/3 of that limit they're suggesting now, because once you get over that 1/3 limit, they start playing with your credit score. And sometimes they can drop that limit unexpectedly on you too, especially right now. So try to not use more than 1/3. Alex and I are both firm believers that when you use a credit card, remember, look at that sale item you think you're getting a deal on when you're using the credit card, whatever it is, times that figure by 5, and that's about what you're going to end up paying for it. So we're coming up on a hard break right now. So we're going to come back. We're going to review a couple more things for you, and then we're going to get into some specifics that are happening right now, some tips and tactics. So you're watching KDTV.com right here for Ventura County. We'll be right back.